You are listening to Life Recovered with Garrett and Tamara.
Eavesdrop on recovery.
Happy New Year! Welcome
Happy New Year.
to 3 of Life Recovered. We are officially abandoning our, as Garrett likes to call them, fluffy puppy dog shows, and we're going to get into the meat of some really fun topics, starting with psychedelics. So Garrett, I'm going to be, throughout this episode, taking advantage of his vulnerable, weak mental state right now. He was up late, and he is up early recording graciously because I'm on Central Time and have a little bit more of a limited schedule, and he agreed to record at 7 a.m. So how are you feeling, Gare Bear?
That's right, on a Saturday. I stayed up too late last night. So, yeah, but I'm feeling good. Yeah, and I actually don't, you ever have those days where you don't remember if you've taken a shower? Like I had that day yesterday. Yeah. I had that day yesterday. And I never have days where I don't remember if I ate, though. I know some people yeah.
That's good. It's just like one metric of self-care that you struggle with remembering.
Yep. Well, I mean, actually, not too often, but yesterday was one of those days.
Yeah.
And
So
I
you're
think,
tired. You're tired today, but how would this
yeah,
have gone back in your drinking days if we were recording a podcast at 7 a.m. after a long night of drinking? How would this be going for you, Gare Bear?
it would have been a obsessive rumination of, I know I need to force myself to throw up so I can feel better, but I really hate throwing up. So I'm just going to lay here and hope that it goes away in 2 hours.
That's the
I mean, it's
worst.
so gross. It's so gross, and I'm only talking about it because it's just amazing that I did this to myself for so long.
Yeah.
But there are more than a few days, and especially on a Saturday morning, where that was my struggle. It wasn't like, oh gosh, should I go run my 3 miles? It's Saturday, and I want to have a cozy cup of coffee with my dog. No, it was, I'm gonna figure out if I need to make myself throw up right now so I can feel a little bit better, or drag it out for 2 hours as my body clears, the disgusting poison. So, yes.
Yeah.
I cannot,
There's
it's so weird to think back on those days.
Yeah, same. There's a perception too that I've noticed of along the spectrum of various addictions that alcoholism is on like the more glamorous side of the spectrum, and other drugs and substances are on the more like, you envision somebody like strung out, hasn't showered in weeks, etc. And I don't think any of the people who have those ideas and conceptions have really been in the trenches with an alcoholic, because it's just as gross. It's pretty gross.
Absolutely.
I don't know that it's just as gross. I don't know what your definition of gross is, but I don't know why I'm saying that. I think because you're making memories flood back in my own head of just how gross it was to be an active alcoholic.
Yeah. Yeah, but those days are gone.
Those days are gone.
Yeah.
Praise the Lord.
I'm saying that
Hey,
confidently.
Your video just went out on my side. I can't see your face anymore.
Yeah. Well, okay. We're going to work through that. We can still hear each other.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
There we go. Okay. So, the topic we wanted to bring to the table today, and the prop that we want to bring to the table today, is ayahuasca / psychedelics on our handy dandy psychedelic bell. So I won't ding that maybe not the entire episode since it is the topic, but yeah, I think it's safe to say that you and I, and we've talked about this over the years, but it's safe to say that our perceptions and our opinions about the subject of psychedelics have really evolved over the years. And maybe we've landed, I'm spoiling it, and maybe we've landed on some kind of a dialectic kind of opinion about it that there's, a light and a dark side to psychedelics. But yeah, can you just take us through your kind of journey? No pun
Oh
intended.
yeah, yeah. Well, before I did ayahuasca, which longtime listeners of the program know that well. Ayahuasca is a powerful psychedelic. You drink it, and you get totally gone. I mean, to put it in basic terms, but it's as powerful as any psychedelic that there is. Even though it's the only one I've done, I don't know that from firsthand experience, but from what everyone says and everything. But no, it's my conception of psychedelics was informed by the media campaign, where if you do it, it's literally going to fry your brain like cracking an egg in a frying pan, which was a
You were really
concerted,
formed. Your opinions were really
yeah,
formed in the just say no era.
in the just say no era. And then growing up, when I can remember even in like the late 70s and early 80s, my parents were well meaning and they would reinforce it, like, doing drugs is, the worst thing that you can do. And I would see like, that commercial, and there was like some, commercial of like a girl screaming with her eyes like bugged out, and, or somebody like, if you take drugs, you lose your mind, you jump out a window. And, and I believed it, just like I believed in Santa Claus or other things I was told when I was really young. It's like, this is 100% true. So that's what I kind of carried with me throughout life. When I first heard about it, all of those like gut reactions, visceral reactions came back. Like, this, what are we doing? This is stupid. I don't get it. I don't understand. I'm in recovery. I'm not drinking. Why am I even entertaining this stuff? That was my, kind of first reaction when I started to see some of my friends starting to do it and talk about it and get into it. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
My perception was pretty similar. Drugs was a whole category. There was no distinction in my mind between like different types of substances. It was all kind of in that scary realm of there's just so much unpredictability. And if you do a drug, you might as well. Growing up, I just thought like if you decide to try drugs, you might as well crawl under a bridge and stay there. That just scary things happen. And I never found it appealing, like the idea of losing control in that way. And then, obviously throughout my 20s, I dabbled in, I've tried a few different mind altering substances. So I had an experience with MDMA, with LSD, with mushrooms, sometimes all mixed together. And that was kind of a brief period of time. So by the time I was introduced, at the same time you were, to the concept of ayahuasca, even though I wasn't familiar with ayahuasca at the time, I think I was a little bit more open-minded, partially because I had the experience of going, I've done a few psychedelics, and the experience, while, it was wild in its own way, it was very different for me than the experience of drinking. Like, drinking sent me kind of into a mental and emotional and physical hole, whereas the psychedelics that I had tried I was doing them, of course, to feel high and to like lose myself, but it was a little bit different kind of experience, at least how I experienced it. So I wasn't totally opposed to the idea of there being like drugs that had some sort of therapeutic or spiritual benefit. I was more in the camp of like, let's find out more about this. And like, I think that with any kind of drug, like context is probably important. So let's hear this out.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was
Wanted to
probably
bring up,
kind of
yeah.
super open in general, though, to a lot of different things because I was very much seeking. I was trying to get sober, as you know, and I was failing miserably, as you also know. And meanwhile, I was just severely depressed and having particularly severe episodes of depression. So I was pretty I was pretty much a seeker and like looking for some kind of answer, and one could even say desperate. So I might have been in a little bit of a different place in recovery than you were, where you were, even though you were relatively early on, you seem to have like some sure footing in terms of like your sobriety. Would you agree?
Can we go into maybe, because we talked about, like, the whole my arrhythmia experience, and you talked about going to Peru, doing your experience. So can we talk about, like, now what my whole point of view is and your point
Yeah,
of
let's
view
do it.
is with it with so first thing, if you're thinking about doing psychedelics and you have any reservations in your head, it's a deeply personal thing. And if you feel like you're drawn to it, do the research and make your own decision. I will say, in my experience, it does not act the same way that alcohol and other drugs act on your body, in that it alcohol builds like craving. Psychedelics don't. Physiologically, you can take it and your body doesn't become addicted to it. And I found that with ayahuasca, especially the fourth night that I did it, I was like, I don't want this anymore. And whereas with alcohol, it would just be like, line up the beer, line up the shots of Patron. It was like this constant, my heartbeat accelerating and wanting more of it. But it's not that way with psychedelics on a physical level. So, but again, do your own research on that. And if you're feeling, reticent about it, and you're like, I don't know if I want to do this, like, don't do it then. Just don't do it. There's no rush. Believe me, in 10 years, it's going to be really easy to do. And, but, and then I'll move to the AA setting of it, right? So I don't know if we've talked about this totally. I'm not going to bash on AA, but I think it is very interesting that the leader of AA, the spiritual experience that he talks about, was directly produced by a psychedelic called belladonna in the 30s. That was his spiritual experience. It was a psychedelic. And he further experimented in like the 50s with another psychedelic. This is Bill Wilson, the great man, founder of Alcoholics Anonymous, the writer of the 12 Steps, saved countless lives, belongs on Mount Rushmore for sure. But the spiritual experience was a psychedelic experience in the hospital. That was that was the higher power. And in the 50s, he found another psychedelic, LSD, because LSD was synthesized in like 1940 or something. And this was before the government campaign that, really said that LSD was going to make you jump out a window. It was before that, and Bill Wilson wanted LSD to be part of Alcoholics Anonymous, because he did it. He'd done a couple psychedelics. He did LSD, and he
And I
wanted it to
thought,
be part of the program. So
yeah, and I thought there, if I can add a little bit of context to that, is Bill's thought, from what I've read, was that like some people have, when you talk about the earlier steps and being open to a higher power, a God of your understanding, that there was such a barrier for so many people that psychedelics, he thought, could be a pathway to like literally having a point in time spiritual experience that opened people's minds to the concept of a higher power and let them have their own experience and interaction with that. And so he did. He wanted to bring it into Alcoholics Anonymous, the program, in some way, shape, or form. And But then, as we know, Garrett, please continue.
Yeah. So, but you go to every Alcoholics Anonymous chapter that I've ever heard of. If you bring it up now that you want to do that as a way to, do that as a method to be sober from alcohol and other drugs like marijuana or cocaine, or you go down the list, but alcohol basically, that you do that and that's you're not sober anymore. It's not body sobriety, and your date is reset and all of that. So, but that's what Bill Wilson did. So based on that, Bill Wilson wasn't sober either. So it's this, I don't like these hard and fast, like, dogmas that I've fallen, I think, prey to over the course of my life, whether it's like religious or whether it's, authority figures and, different like recovery groups, a sponsor, what have you, where, I could fall sway to like, well, okay, now I'm not 6+, I'm not 6 years sober yet, but I'm not 5+ years sober, because I did ayahuasca. There was like a couple months where I was like, well, I'm resetting my date, and I told, a couple people, well, I'm resetting my date now, but I've really sort of gone down that and thought about it some more. And I'm just like, yeah, I still, for a number of reasons, my date remains my date, May 8th, 2017. So, but there's some danger, like for myself, because it's, not physically addictive, but, it's neither is like gambling and neither is other, process addictions, right? I don't know if this it would totally be a process addiction, but,
Yeah.
you can certainly fall into, addictive pathways, in my opinion, with psychedelics. And I certainly, could feel myself wanting to do, all the psychedelics, right?
Yeah.
And it's maybe for the wrong reasons, to put it in bachelor terms. I
Yeah,
wasn't here for
it's
the,
interesting that you liken it to process addictions, because I would actually
yeah,
100% agree, is that it feels like, if anything, that it's more of a pitfall in terms of a process addiction than a substance bodily addiction. Because if you've experienced it yourself, you know that there's not a pull, as Garrett described. It doesn't feel like there's a pull to do the substance again. In fact, I walked away from my own ayahuasca experience hoping to never have to experience anything remotely like that ever again. However, I think you can, especially if you're in a place in your life where you're seeking, I think it's especially like a pitfall to watch out for, because you can become like a chaser of that high of self-revelation, and those like big spiritual experiences and aha moments. Like, I see that even, with women I worked with in the program of AA, is like kind of the struggle to constantly remind ourselves that the program itself is actually really simple and really basic, and on an elementary level you can understand it, but we want to make a lot of our recovery, or I wanted to make a lot of my recovery in those early days about like I'm so unique and special that I need these like big aha moments about like my psyche. So that, I think it can be like in the camp of more of a process addiction, if and I've met people, who have been in a perpetual state of like seeking the next, trip, the next psychedelic journey. So it's a thing.
so there's no like, hard and fast rules, and everybody, makes a, well, okay, I would say, in my opinion, if you're want to get sober from alcohol, you can't touch alcohol. You can't, it's just gone. It's like, it's binary. It's either you drink it or you don't drink it, right? But psychedelics is not binary, in my opinion. There's all these kind of weird, factors to it where you can't, from my experience, like I said, I could feel the pull of like, well, what's LSD gonna feel like? What's mescaline gonna feel like? What's ketamine gonna feel like? What's MDMA gonna feel like? And that's the thing is like, well, that's what, an addict or an alcoholic would say, because of course, like, oh, Percocet, I know what Percocet feels like, give me more Percocet. So, but they're not really designed, if you do it in, there's the phrase like set and setting, where if you do it in a, because it does have, it can have a real transformative power in your life. It really can. I still draw back to, especially the experience that I had in Costa Rica, especially on the second night. There's still things that I understand now, like, key thing. I have this thing in my head where if I get anxious about something, I still tell myself everything's all right because everything's already happened. It makes you have this weird conception of time, almost like time doesn't exist or time's different, so you see things.
A little key to our existence a little bit.
Yeah. The default mode network gets turned off. And so so with that, but if I slammed a cup of ayahuasca, and ayahuasca, it doesn't really taste like hot chocolate or chai tea lattes, does it, Tamara? It's really disgusting.
It's not the yummiest substance I've ever had, no.
It's really, really pungently, powerfully, oh my God, this is,
it's like drinking bitter mud. Yeah.
Yeah. So if I had this in my Stormtrooper mug right now, it would suck. If I just downed it right now in the state that I'm in, I wouldn't have a good morning. It would be just stupid.
Afternoon.
Or afternoon. Well, it does last about 4 hours, right? But
depends on how much you drink.
Right. So yeah. But if you're if you're, I don't know, if you're doing LSD, if you're doing psychedelics, like you said that you did, Tamara, where you just like, everyone's like partying and like, woohoo, and you're just like doing it just to get effed up. And that's your mindset. And that's what you want to do. That's why you want to take it. You're probably not going to have a good trip. But if it's
superficial euphoria to ayahuasca.
Right. Exactly. But if you're in this, if it's curated and it's done in like this ceremonial way, they call it, then it can be very beneficial. So, I went
I was just going to say, I almost wish that, I'm very thankful for the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that we have today as it exists. I almost wish that we could have seen at least how it would have played out if there had been like some kind of framework put around like what a psychedelic tool as a spiritual experience would have looked like. Like I just wonder in my mind what would have come out of that if Bill and team had continued down that path. Because I can see why, I have a lot of understanding for even the hardliners in AA who are like, no substances, it's like nothing, or it's not sobriety, or completely, kind of brush off the LSD days as like, well, Bill was flawed too, but because it can be, if you just try to figure it out on your own, left to your own devices, it can be a really slippery slope, because then it's like, well, if I can use this substance for a spiritual experience, why can't I use like meth for a spiritual experience? Or, if, well then how many spiritual experiences can I have and how often can I have them? And it becomes like a very slippery slope. And I feel like one of the things I love about the way Alcoholics Anonymous, the book, and the 12 and 12 for that matter, is written, is it gives you a lot of guardrails and a framework for like every suggestion. so that, you know, as you have conversations with your sponsor, or you kind of grapple with your own recovery and your own work, it's like I can kind of have these guardrails to work in to kind of keep me on track and like on center and making sure I'm working for the right thing. And we don't have that, with in the context of like using a psychedelic to induce a spiritual experience and an understanding of God. So I kind of wish that they would have like gone down that path, because I'm sure that they would have that Bill and team would have put like some kind of like working framework around it to protect, the whole goal that was in mind, which is helping people get sober from alcohol.
Mm-hmm. No, it's a good point about if I can do LSD for a spiritual experience, why can't I do meth? And that's why I said, like, if you have any doubts or anything like that, just don't do it, just really be careful and considered, for sure. But yeah, I don't know if that would have gone into a doctrine. That's interesting, the alternate history, because the government still would have cracked down. Mm-hmm. Nixon, it was Nixon that came out with, it was a response to the counterculture, and he, seeing all these hippies at Haight-Ashbury in San Francisco and different places, and that was the crackdown and everything. So who knows what would happen? He's like, and we have the Alcoholics Anonymous people.
Yeah.
And Bill Wilson telling people to do tabs of LSD.
Yeah. Yeah, it was really successfully demonized during that time as a whole. And I think we probably, as a culture, probably threw out the baby with the bathwater to some degree. Mm-hmm. I'm sure. Because there are various degrees even in, addiction and, using substances. There's a whole wide spectrum of like levels of harm that it can cause. Mm-hmm. Physically, how addicted you can get, how much it can begin to run your life. There's a whole spectrum of pitfalls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if you're, yeah.
I've kind of landed in a similar place as you, though. Sorry, I think there was a little bit of a delay. I've kind of landed in a similar place as you, is all I'm going to say, is that I think it's a dialectic. I think that there's a light side and a dark side of psychedelics. Like I see there's a Senate committee right now it's a bipartisan Senate committee that's exploring, I want to say it's LSD. I believe it's LSD, but I could be wrong. It's some kind of psychedelic that they're really investing in the research that's being done specifically with PTSD combat veterans.
Yeah, psilocybin maybe.
Psilocybin, okay. So
yeah.
I support that, and I think the more we can kind of safely explore like various benefits and understand, I think that there's potential for substances to do some good, and I think it's worth exploring to do the hard work of like understanding how nuanced it is, rather than just like making a vast, like a sweeping judgment either way, like that drugs are all bad or that drugs are all good all the time, and see where there can be some benefits in the middle, and how to weigh that against mm-hmm. some of the risks.
And I've got mixed feelings about like full legalization. I mean, I know it's legalized in the state of Oregon, and I think maybe in like the city of Denver. I'm talking about like psilocybin, because if you're not in a proper set and setting, this is not going to go well. You can't just do a bunch of mushrooms and you can go drive a car or something. I know obviously we can't do that with alcohol either, but it's, I don't know, that in California, marijuana dispensaries are legal, and they're not where I live, but they're close, and I don't really like them. I don't really like seeing the advertisements. I mean, I don't have an issue with it being legal, but there's something about seeing like all these advertisements, and I don't know. It's just, I have mixed feelings about that. And having like dispensaries around, and it's going to be, it's one thing to get some gummies and, chill out on those. But if you can just walk in and get tabs of LSD for free, it's going to be interesting. So I think that it will become more and more legal as, like you said, they're doing research on it. And Michael Pollan's book, How to Change Your Mind, there's a Netflix series that's of the same name, which is good. And but they don't have an ayahuasca episode on that. They have LSD and MDMA and like peyote and ketamine or something, but no ayahuasca.
What's the show called for people who want to watch it?
It's called, I think it's called How to Change Your Mind on Netflix.
Oh, of the same name. Okay.
Yeah.
So it's Michael Pollan.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it's relatively new. It only came out like 3 months ago.
Oh.
So it's pretty good. I mean, there's an explosion of content like this.
Yeah.
But the Netflix one's probably the best one that I've seen.
In my mind, I might be oversimplifying this. You can tell me if I am, but in my mind, there are two, like the issue of kind of the question of legalization and legislation and all of that is a little bit separate in my mind from like where I tend to grapple with all of this, which is like, does it do good or harm for people? Because those things don't tend to intersect a lot when it comes to the law around drugs, because if it were simply about like the potential harms, then alcohol would be illegal. So it tends to be like more about ultimately
good point.
Money when it comes to legalization, money in politics. So I just I don't have very many opinions or ideas necessarily about like the extent to which drugs should be legal and the context and for whom. But I do have a lot of thoughts, and I am interested in like, how can things benefit versus harm people?
Mm-hmm. Good point, Tamara. Yeah. It is two different things. And I think that it will be legal within 5 to 10 years, but, I'm just trying to think like, what would that look like? But yep. So in my experience with ayahuasca, I did it in Costa Rica in 2019, like 4 years ago now. Wow. And, I know, it's crazy. And then I did it again in early February of 2021 in LA. And so they could not have been two different experiences. Like this is the set and the setting. The first experience was overwhelmingly positive. The second experience, no. And I felt like after I did it that second time, I was like, I am done with this. And I haven't had the desire to go do it again, because I was really put off by the whole experience. It wasn't wasn't a horrific set and setting, but it was nothing like being in Costa Rica. It was just too crowded. We were like sardines. We were just like sardines packed up against each other, and so.
So was the difference just in the experiences themselves, or was in? So you don't think that there was any difference in terms of like leading up to those experiences in terms of like your intentions or desires or?
Gosh, good questions today, man. No, you're probably right. You're
questions, or are you just
no? That actually was because no, you're right, and I think that was a big part of the reason is. My mindset and intention was not the same as it was in Costa Rica. And I just totally just realized that it was totally different. It was my intention really of going in there was like, I want to see how this stuff makes me feel again. That was I get the, spiritual experience and all of that. And then as soon as I took it, I felt like I was in this like blank void of terror and all I could think of was, I just want Tasha to come in here, grab me, and drive me away from here. And that's all I was thinking, you know. And but it was an overnight thing, so we did one ceremony. Like, I think we came in on Friday evening, so like the first ceremony began at 8 o'clock p.m. and then it ended, or maybe it didn't start. I don't know, maybe till like 9 o'clock. It went late, and everyone comes out of it at like 2 in the morning, and I was just like, I've got to be here. I can't just get in my car and leave, because they're really strange. I mean, if I would have made a fuss, they would have let me out, but they're really strange about the circle cannot be, must be closed until this certain time. And so like I had to stay there till the next day, which was like Saturday at like 5 o'clock in the evening. And it was this weird, like central casting LA house high on this like mountaintop in Chatsworth, which is where, they filmed a lot of early Western movies. And it was like this weird mansion, and the energy was a little weird and kind of off. And I almost, the second I got there, I almost regretted it right from the beginning. So yeah, but that was a nice little good lesson. And the second ceremony, I didn't want any at all. And so the lady, and the good thing about this is it validates that it's not physically addicting. Like, I didn't want the second one at all. And I took so the one of the shamans, quote unquote shamans, which is kind of cheesy, but she said like, well, we had to have like participation. She was very nice, and participation in the ceremony. So I took a tiny hummingbird sip that didn't have any effect at all, like this tiniest little thing. And so I was still, quote unquote, in the ceremony. And that was during the day, which is terrifying, because psychedelics for me, you want to do them in almost pitch blackness with some music going. So
interesting. Yeah.
So that was.
It reminds me of when I had my ayahuasca experience in Peru. There were 2 ceremonies as well. The first night was my friend who was with me. He had kind of a similar experience his first night, similar in that like what he walked away with, like his wife, like just in his mind, just a movie of his life, like with his wife was playing out, and he just wanted to be with her. And so it was like he walked away with, you already have everything you need. And he just couldn't wait to get back home. And when we did the debriefing on all of our experiences that first night, the shaman basically said, you're done. You don't need any more. And like, you have what you need, which gives me chills right now. But he, and then you got to be, and as we know, it was like, you have demons inside of you that you need to let out. You need a double dose tonight. I was like, oh, cool. But so he just like stuck around for the second ceremony to just pray during the ceremony, while everybody else did ayahuasca. But it sounds similar to your kind of second experience in that, like, what you got from it was like almost like a go home, you have everything that you need.
Yeah, absolutely. And it was about 2 years after Costa Rica. And I still get emails. Well, I won't get into that.
Ooh, yeah.
Confidentiality. So, respect the confidentiality. So, it's still not legal in the United States. And you have like this afterglow. That's a real thing. Absolutely, from Costa Rica. And that wears off. That's also a real thing. So as it wears off, there are people that will continually do a lot of ceremonies, like on a fairly regular basis. That's not for me. Everybody kind of, because the issue with that for me would be that I would get into this, mindset of I continually need a substance, an external substance,
right,
to escape or fix the pain or all of that, all of those things that I would use alcohol for. And so the positive thing is that you can transfer. This is like a nuclear, psychedelics is a nuclear explosion. Meditation is like a gentle stream but they both take you to the exact same place, like for real. And Sam Harris talks about that because Sam Harris is, he's done psychedelics and meditation as well. So if you have, when I did it, it made meditation quite a bit easier because you can sort of drop back into sort of the state that you were in, a tiny little part of the state that you were in for myself in Costa Rica. Yeah. So I can sort of and especially as I was pretty fresh off that experience, it was really easy, and I can still do it today. I can still close my eyes and I can sort of feel myself back in that room in Costa Rica. And the place was Arrhythmia Life Advancement Center. Everybody, you can look at that online.
I don't
it's
remember
a boutique.
The name of where I went. So
what?
It's a little boutique place.
You went to you went to a
tiny village in Peru. Yeah, we went to Cusco. It was right outside of Cusco, Peru. So I'm sure you could find it.
You had it down. You had down and dirty.
Down and dirty.
You had down and dirty, and I had.
It was to date. This isn't ayahuasca related, but after the first ceremony, the second day, they took us all to this specific place. Felt like service work of some sort, like just experiencing, like serving others was important. And so after the first ceremony, the next day they took us to. I've been on mission trips, like I've been in really just impoverished parts of the world, and this was unlike anything I'd ever experienced because they took us to a place where it was essentially like an assisted living for disabled people from birth to death. So from young children all the way to elderly, there were people there, who couldn't feed themselves, dress themselves, things like that. And so we spent the day there, I was brushing girls, playing with the kids. So I would, take them on walks in their wheelchairs, brush their hair. And it was just like wrapping my mind around like life there was probably the most like otherworldly thing I had ever experienced. But, yeah, so I felt like they handled everything. Like there was a lot of intentionality behind like every part of the weekend for us. And the staff was really kind and helpful and thorough. Can't say anything bad about that, but it is fun. It is interesting to me how there's like doing psychedelics like in America, and then there's like this whole like at the time at least it was like no, like you have to go to South America, like you have to like go to the Amazon or something and like be in the woods with people who have been learning to be shaman their entire lives because that somehow makes it like much more spiritual an experience.
Yeah, the substance is the substance, whether or not you're hiking in the woods, in the backwoods of Peru, or if you're doing it in Chatsworth, or if you're doing it in a very nice wellness resort, which is what Rhythmia is. So it goes back to, yeah, people decide to do this stuff, have a good reason why you're doing it, and a good intention, and really do research and really talk to people that are well versed in it. And you can also ask me, everybody. I'm always available. I'm around. You can ask Tamara too.
Garrett at iloveayahuasca.com. Anyway.
Alrighty. Anyways. Yeah, so it's a interesting, fascinating subject. What can we say? What can we say, people? If you do it for the right reasons. Cannot stress that enough. It's not, I don't know. what was I going to say? It's not something that you want to substitute for your alcohol addiction. It's not a guard against it becoming a transfer addiction.
Sure.
You know,
It's
you fix
interesting to me that we've
the
both gone ditch to ditch from, like, oh, this is like a portal to, enlightenment, basically, and kind of seeking that all the way to, you and I both went through phases where like it's bad, it's awful, it's just like a substitution for, your addiction to alcohol. And then we
hmm
both kind of landed at, I think during that time we were both like kind of finding our own footing and not just recovery, but like our spirituality, like, and our life's purpose. And I just find myself, I've been thinking as we've been talking about this, about like, it's interesting to me that knowing my personality, like why I'm not like finding myself like desiring to go do some kind of psychedelic and have that experience again, like with ayahuasca or anything else. But I think I've just it's just the season of life I'm into. Like I'm less in search of enlightenment and more just like concerned with purpose in my life and like living out my purpose. And where I am in life right now, like I can't afford to keep my head in the clouds all the time. Like I have to keep my feet firmly planted on the ground, as the big book
hmm
says. And so I find myself, still, seeking like spiritual connection, God, and just to kind of like drive my purpose and like the direction that I'm going in life. But I'm not in that headspace I was in when I did ayahuasca, where I'm like, I need answers, and I'm more in like an existential crisis for why I'm even here.
hmm Well, outstanding. Yeah, yeah, that's good. That's absolutely, I think, very healthy.
I'm glad you agree.
What I'm
And we
hearing you
did it. We
say
talked
is very,
we
very
talked about
healthy.
psychedelics. We did it.
Still got the bells. Hopefully that comes through on the recording with our new software.
Fingers crossed that this thing
Yeah,
works.
Tamara, you have time to watch any streaming TV shows anymore?
Yes, I've actually started your most recent suggestion, which is Fleischman is in Trouble, which
Yeah,
I
you
highly
like it?
recommend. I do. I was
Yeah.
waiting like, and I'm like midway through it, and I was like, I've been asking myself, okay, what is this going to be about? What is this going to be about? Like, what's the thing? And it's
hmm
kind of about everything. It's through the lens of, a divorced man, but it's and like his friend kind of narrating the story, and it's like it's kind of about everything in
Yeah,
life.
wait till you get to episode 7.
Okay, good to know. I will wait.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm watching that right now. Jordan and I are watching, oh my gosh, what's it called? Tulsa King together.
Yeah, with Stallone. Is that with Stallone?
It is,
Right?
it's really good. We both really, really like it. Yes. And I have recently watched season 2 of The Vow, which is excellent. It's pretty
hmm
bombshell. And I've also
hmm
watched the Hillsong documentary, which
hmm
is really good as well. And I've watched, it's just 3 episodes, but Angels and Demons, the Victoria's Secret slash Les Wexner Epstein documentary on Hulu, and that
Okay.
was really good. So, still staying in my lane of, interesting documentaries about, you know, tangential cult kind of stuff, corruption, things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
How
Like,
about
there's a
you,
good,
Garrett?
I like a good murder mystery and a good cult documentary. Uh,
Always.
yeah. So I had to get out my phone and go to my TV Time app. You see,
Ooh, I
I
do.
that's a guilty pleasure right there. You see that She-Hulk attorney at law.
I see
You see
the
Jack
Kardashian.
Ryan, Kardashians is there,
This is
American
enlightening.
Horror
Oh, and did you
Story.
watch Couples Therapy?
Yeah, yeah.
It's
I
a good.
mean, it's pretty good. And then go down a little bit. Some of these I've put on the shelf and I've stopped watching. There's just too many shows right now. There's just
Mm-hmm.
too many shows, so that's the problem. But there's the ones that I'm caught up on actually are not here. So these are the ones that I'm not caught up on. So these are more the lukewarm ones, I guess.
Yeah,
Yellowstone,
love Yellowstone.
1923. Yeah, it's a silly soap opera is what it is at its core. It's a silly, very
Yeah.
entertaining soap opera.
Oh, it is. I love it.
1923 is good. Yeah. And yeah. So yeah, like the Mandalorian. I mean, that's coming back, and oh, Yellow Jackets on Showtime is coming back. You ever see that one? I recommend that one highly.
Yes, I did.
Yellow
Yes, that
Jackets.
was really good.
Yeah,
With the plane
the plane
crash.
crash. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Is there a
so
season
that's
two of
coming
that one?
back. Yeah. I just said it's coming back. It's coming back. It's coming back.
Oh, it's
So
coming back.
that's
Okay,
season two.
awesome.
Oh, and
I'm
then
still waiting
another
for
one.
season two.
Yeah, season two is coming, and then another one is found on Apple TV Plus, which is maybe one of my favorite ones I've ever seen, and it's just for sci-fi geeks like me. Foundation is unreal, and season two is coming in about 70, 80 days. So yeah,
Do
Apple
you know if
TV
there's
has
going to
some
be a
good
new
shows.
season of Tehran?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, they've announced that there will be. Yes. That's a great show too. Fantastic show.
It's one of my
Dun, dun,
favorites.
dun, dun, dun. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, also on Apple. So, yeah, I'm gonna take my golden retriever puppy and go. Tasha's having a little mini Ragnar relay today. Do you know about the Ragnar relays?
Of course I do. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a mini. She's only doing like I don't know how I think they might have set this up amongst themselves or a local high school did. So I
Hmm.
think it's going to be like high school kids versus really old middle age people with adult children, which is my demographic. So it's going to be like, yeah, Tasha and her running friends. And then I'm going to take Summer there and we're going to hang out later on today. So yeah, I'm
Awesome.
looking
We'll
forward
have
to
fun with
that.
Tasha and
Yep.
Summer. I've got a
Yeah.
regular,
What do you got
ordinary
going this
weekend.
weekend?
I have a work call today, and then other than that, it's a regular weekend, just finding fun things to do with two little toddlers. We've got our nephew's little basketball game, and Joelle, our 2-year-old, had her very first, I guess, her first official sleepover with them last night. She stayed with her
Holy
nana,
cow.
since she was a baby, but
Okay.
she stayed over with her little cousin and aunt and uncle last night, and
Hmm.
we're all going to converge later today and just, spend how we spend most of our Saturdays, which is like watching our girls play. And
Mm-hmm.
of course, we have the Titans game tonight. So we will be, it's a big one. We're on a terrible streak. Everybody's injured, including our quarterback. So we play the
Yeah,
Jaguars
you
tonight.
guys lost like seven straight, right? Yeah,
Six straight,
crazy,
I think. Oh yeah, it's been
crazy.
insane. Yeah, our whole offensive line has been down most of the season. Like it's bad when like I've watched games recently where our backups to the backup are getting injured. I'm like, we just need to figure out how to stay healthy, I guess. But we're huge Titans fans, so we'll be watching tonight and just kind of seeing what happens with our brand new quarterback who like played his first starting game in the NFL last week. He moved the ball pretty well, made some bad decisions too, but wasn't so bad for somebody who had just like 2 days earlier signed to be a Titan. So
Mm-hmm.
we're just kind of, we're not super invested in outcomes at this point. We're just watching because it's the Titans. So we'll see.
Excellent.
Well, Garrett, it's been fun to
Yeah.
talk about drugs with you.
So great. This is we've talked about it before in past episodes, but I like this conversation. This is my favorite conversation we've ever had about drugs.
I
So put
would
that right at the
1,000%
top.
agree.
Put that right at the top. Yep. All right, Tamara, enjoy your weekend.
You too, Gare Bear. Bye, everybody.